Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan, and today we're going to be talking about how the Death Guard invades a planet. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you have any suggestions, please comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on how the Death Guard invades a planet. When Grandfather Nurgle unleashes his legion of corrupted space marines, like the caring patron he is, the Lord of Decay kindly prepares the battlefield for his beloved children. If the planet in which his precious plague marines is not overflowing with pus and maggots, Nurgle makes sure to send his demonic gardeners to cultivate an environment of filth and grime before his favorite children can make their appearance. A plague marine's invasion is always forewarned by a rise in putrefied omens. Compared to other Chaos Space Marines, Death Guard Astartes, or Plague Marines for that matter, are truly the most pampered worshippers of chaos. No Death Guard invasion showcases Nurgle's pampering like the War of the Flies, a Plague Marine incursion that occurred in the Ultramar sector during the Plague Wars. Amongst the many worlds of Ultramar, those of the three-planet systems have been the most bountiful, a trio of agri-worlds, Quintarin, Tarantis, and Masoli. Predominantly rocky deserts, the three planets were unusual for agri-worlds in that their endless crop rotations were grown within huge fortified habdomes. During the period of time known as the Blackness, after the fall of Cadia, the world of Masoli was shifted a few degrees off its orbital track by shuddering empiric forces. Whether by chance or some darker design, Masoli underwent dramatic climatological change as it was battered by wrenching grav waves and racing superstorms. By the time the planet's trial subsided, Masoli's human population had been all but exterminated, or at least evacuated. Yet a new world had been created that was even more fertile than before. Gone were the stony expanses and sand-blasted wastes, replaced by endless tracts of nutrition-rich soils, across which fell warming sunlight and soft cooling rains. From within the shattered structures of the agri-domes came clouds of drifting seeds and spores, the crops continuing to propagate as they always had, until whole continents were carpeted in swaying oceans of bountiful flora. Some believe this was a blessing from the Emperor, others that this was Nurgle's first surpassingly subtle attack upon Masoli. Considering what came after, it is hard to contest either theory. The people of Ultramar were quick and industrious to seize this new paradise, and reaping its produce to feed the ongoing war efforts of their empire. Vast agri-fortresses rose amongst the golden macro fields, city-sized strongholds that were settlements, gun-studded castles, and crop-processing hubs all in one. Fleets of barges descended into low orbit every single day, greedily devouring the food bales ferried up from the planet below, and bearing them away to the waiting worlds of Ultramar. The first sign that anything was wrong came when a strange blight struck the crops of the northern polar steppes. Afflicted plants ripened at an unnatural rate, bloating far beyond what was natural and turning rotten and sour. Finally, the squirming, bruise-colored crops bursted open, spilling clouds of droning flies into the air. Serf laborers reported strange whispers and stirring shadows wherever the clouds of flies droned through the air. And a spree of insanity and violent murder struck the work camps and harvester factorums in the region. The blight spread through the crop oceans like wildfire, and no attempt to stop its advance proved successful. Day by day, the skies over the polar steppes darkened with the smoke of burning crops and the ever-growing swarms of flies. Alarmed by the worsening crisis, and conscious of a wave of nightmares and dark omens sweeping his world, Masoli's planetary governor ordered his astropathic choir to send a distress call out into the void. A former soldier who fought on Talisar against the Iron Warriors before the Blackness, Governor Titus was canny enough to suspect that a far greater horror was on its way. Titus's grim predictions were proven true when on the 77th day of the blight, the vast clouds of flies blanketing the northern sky turned as one and swept together. They formed a single, raging storm of bloated black bodies and buzzing wings, a cyclonic storm of flies 100 miles wide. The insect vortex span faster and faster, its droning roar carrying across the steppes to infect the souls of all who heard it. From within the thundering storm, there rose a dolorous tolling of bells and wailing of damned souls. One by one, warriors of the Death Guard strode from the fly storm their hulking forms looming through the veil of unreality to stand amidst Masoli's rotting fields. War was immediate and savage, with more warriors advancing from the fly-swarm vortex by the moment. Whole colonies of traitor legionnaires formed up and trudged out to battle. With them flew bloated demon engines, while at their heels came rusted, lumbering battle tanks and larger, more terrifying war machines. Shambling herds of poxwalkers flowed around them, their malignant moans infecting those who heard them and spreading their spiritual sickness through the Masolian populace with frightening speed. Armored regiments of Ultramar's defense auxilia mobilized to fight back, roaring out in glorious columns of speeding tanks to stop the invasion before it could truly begin. The macro fields burned and withered as gunfire whipped back and forth, and tanks churned rich soil to bloody pus-licked mud. Explosions flashed across fly-blown horizons day and night, but ultimately the defense auxilia could do little to slow the Death Guard advance. One regiment after another was crushed, the corpse of their crews rising soon after, with rictus grins to join the shambling hordes of poxwalkers. The first Agri fortress, Diomedes, fell shortly after, its crushing gates smashed down and its defenders blasted into oblivion by advancing Chaos Space Marines. It seemed as if though nothing could halt the unstoppable march of Mortarion's festering sons. After Diomedes, the Death Guard advance split into 3 separate forces, led by mighty champions of Nurgle. Each flowed toward one of Masoli's largest Agri fortresses, drowning settlements and blackening the land like unrushing rivers of corruption. Masoli's capital city was the recently rebuilt Agri fortress of Quadropolis, a fortified amalgama of Hive City, fortress, and processing cathedral dedicated to the Emperor and his 17 saints of the harvest. It was situated in a natural valley between 2 low ranges of mountains, and was protected by concentric rings of fortifications, batteries, and auxilia bastions. Here was local Governor Titus's palace, the primary command sanctum of Masoli's Adeptus Ministorum, and the world's astropathic chambers, to name but a few irreplaceable military assets. If Quadropolis fell, the heart would be torn from Masoli's defenses, allowing the Death Guard to overwhelm the world's survivors at will. Charged with crushing the Enclave was Golgoth the Afflictor, Lord of Contingent and commander of the Tainted Sons Victorium. Golgoth was an unsubtle warrior to say the least, and one who took gruesome pleasure in his work. The Lord of Contingent considered his orders, issued by no less than Mortarion himself, as a glorious opportunity to bring Nurgle's blessings to the benighted corpse worshippers of his world. He would tear open the sterile vessel of Masoli's capital city and fill it to overflowing with Nurgle's blessings. Lord Golgoth's initial attacks were resoundingly successful. Filth-encrusted siege titans blasted the Basilica Fortis into rubble, opening the mouth of the valley to infection and attack. Clouds of plague flies swept across the northern ramparts, blinding and suffocating defense auxilia, while Death Guard siege tanks moved into position and shelled their outer defenses to ruin. A heaving mass of 50,000 poxwalkers surged across the city's outer minefields, overrunning the Bastion Centaurum and the Bastion Angelic before they were finally exterminated by desperate auxilia counterattacks. Meanwhile, plagues and parasites infected the city itself in ever greater numbers, leaving corpses rotting in the streets and priests running mad as they preached the end of all things. Only 7 days after his siege began, Lord Golgoth stood poised before Quadropolis' Aquilian gates. The Tainted Sons were poised, ready to advance down Transitway Eagle Alpha and break the city wide open. It was at this crucial moment that aid finally arrived. Sweeping into orbit over the beset Agri world came strike cruiser Gilliman's Vengeance. Aboard this fast-moving warship was Captain Sevastus Akron and his strike force of Primaris Space Marines. Warriors of the Ultramarine 2nd Company, Akron and his battle brothers had been dispatched as soon as the governor's astropathic distress cries reached McCrag. The fickle tides of the warp had delayed Strike Force Akron until this desperate juncture, yet the scions of Gilliman were superb strategists and decisive warriors. Rather than balk at the desperate situation below, Akron immediately set to analyze where his forces could strike to turn the tides of war. One Death Guard Victorium appeared to be mirrored in a vast tank battle, while a second was still digging slime-choked trench work around the outer defenses of the Agri fortress of Mortengol. Clearly, the Victorian poise to overrun Chondropolis presented the most immediate danger to the Imperial war efforts. With this target determined, Captain Akron ordered Guilliman's vengeance into low orbit and readied his forces for an immediate combat drop. Intercessor squads jogged across the ship's embarkment decks, bolt rifles held at ready as they clambered aboard waiting Storm Raven gunships or strapped into the grav harness of a drop pod. Hellblaster squads gathered and knelt in prayer to the machine spirit of their volatile weapons. Inceptor squads stood patiently as arming servitors machined their heavy jump packs into place under the watchful eyes of a hunched tech priest. As each assault specialist pack was affixed and sanctified, they strode into position beneath the maglock deployment rigs that would swing them out into space before firing them into Masoli's upper atmosphere. Cocooned within the ceramite and adamantium immensity of Mark X Gravis armor, Captain Akron strode up the rank of his Storm Raven gunship. If he could halt the Death Guard force before Chondropolis and turn back the foe with a glorious victory, then they would buy time for fresh reinforcements to reach the war. For Masoli, vowed Akron, the Imperial counterattack began here. And those were 40 facts on how the Death Guard invades a planet. Thank you guys so much for listening. This comes from the No Fear box set. So after that, you basically play out Death Guard versus Ultramarines, and then the winner of those campaigns, of those battles, then, gets the conclusion of what happens, or creates the conclusion of who actually wins the planet, which is pretty cool. We never actually played this campaign because obviously it's more for like beginners, so you use very small numbers, but it's a cool story nonetheless. It's a really good way to narratively set up a campaign for either a planet or even a system. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank our patrons on Patreon. If you guys want to support us, the link is down in the description. It's just $1 a month. And with that said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This is Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.